This is Thor. That's Poncho. The lighting is really bad.
That's why I said you sit over there.
That's fine. This is Thor. He's got on his tie. It's an old man tie because he's an old man. And this Poncho and his soccer ball tie. You see what I mean? He doesn't leave Thor alone. Okay, bye. Say bye. Okay, bye.
Children smell good.
Say bye. Okay. Hi, angels. Okay. Diving right into Harry Potter Chapter 1, The Boy Who Lived. If you weren't here and you have your book in front of you, I will tell you where you're supposed to be text marking. Before we start, we need to talk about motifs. Remember that motifs are like baby themes that go on throughout a piece of art or literature. They're reoccurring ideas. 4 motifs in Harry Potter that we're going to be talking about. The first one is points, choice, the number 3, and then Harry's actual scar on his forehead. There are colors for each of them. Points, pink, choice, green, number 3, yellow, and the scar is blue. Book starts, okay? We're introduced to Mr. and Mrs. Dursley and their son Dudley. Immediately, those are 3 people, our first introduction to the motif of the number 3. Mr. Dursley is described as being a big, beefy man with hardly any neck who has a large mustache. And he's in charge of a firm that makes drills, like drills. His wife has twice the usual amount of neck because she spends so much of her time spying on the neighbors. She's a stay-at-home mom to her son, Dudley. They say that the Dursleys' biggest fear in the world is that someone finds out their secret. The secret is that they have relatives named the Potters, Lily and James Potter. Obviously, you can figure out that they are Harry's parents. So Harry's mom is sisters with Mrs. Dursley, which makes Mrs. Dursley Harry's aunt and Mr. Dursley Harry's uncle. They don't speak to the Potters. They don't talk about the Potters. No one knows that they're related because there's something mysterious about the Potters that they don't want anyone to find out. So they've never met their nephew, who still at this point has not been named. They don't mention him. So they have a normal, boring life. The story says that it starts on a dull, gray Tuesday morning. Mr. Dursley is getting ready to go to work. He's on his morning commute. And he leaves the driveway and sees a cat. The cat is reading a map. So imagine you're driving. Drive. And you think you see something funky going on, like a cat reading a map. He does one of these, like a quick double take. And then the cat's no longer reading a map. It's now looking at a sign. He thinks it's reading the sign. And he's like, no, I'm being crazy. The cat isn't reading the sign. It's just looking at the sign. So Mr. Dursley's staring at this cat, and then it starts staring back. And he's like, that's pretty weird. So he keeps driving to work. Now he's in traffic, and he's sitting in a normal traffic jam. And he's looking around, and he sees a bunch of people in cloaks. A cloak was one of your vocabulary words. It is not a coat. It's a cloak. A cloak is kind of like a Dracula-esque thing. Kind of like Batman. His cape, it's like a cape kind of thing that goes all the way down to the ground. And it has like long enough parts that are like sleeves. Picture Dracula being like, that's a cloak. And you gotta remember, Harry Potter is set in modern day England. And so it's like the 90s-ish when this is happening. And you're like leaving Burger King and imagine you see a bunch of people walking around town in cloaks. It's very weird. And he's a very mean man, so this puts him in a terrible, terrible mood. So he continues to drive to work. He gets to work. They say he had a great morning at work because he got to yell at a whole bunch of different people, which he loves to do. So he yells at a bunch of different people. And he goes across the street at lunch to get a donut. And as he's leaving the donut shop, he hears the word Harry Potter. And he freaks out. Because remember, they pretend that the Potters don't even exist. Their biggest fear is that someone finds out about the Potters. So he runs back into his office, yells at his secretary, "Don't disturb me," and picks up the phone. And it's like a phone with cords, guys. So he's dialing on the phone, and he's calling home. And then he's like, click, and being stupid. Don't worry her. It's fine. It's probably, like, what are the odds that it's Harry Potter? And I don't even know if my nephew's name is Harry. I've never met the guy. So he goes home to his wife, and he's, like, 100% positive that he's not going to say the name Harry Potter when he gets home. Like, he's like, I'm not going to tell her that this kid's name, that I heard her nephew's name. When he pulls in the driveway, the cat is now sitting outside of his house. The cat that he thought was reading the map, the cat's sitting outside his house. He says, shoo, and the cat's like, he goes inside. He doesn't say anything to his wife. His wife is telling him all about the gossip that he heard, and he is like, don't talk about Harry Potter. Don't talk about Harry Potter. He goes, turns on the news, watches the news. He finds out that all day long there's been owls seen all over England, again, which is weird because they're nocturnal. He says that he has seen shooting stars all over England, and he knows that there were a bunch of people running around in cloaks today. Very weird. So at this point, he's like, this is weird. I need to tell Mrs. Dursley all these things. So his wife comes in, and he's like, have you heard from your sister? To which she responds, no, why? And she gets really defensive about it. And he says, oh, funny stuff on the news, owls shooting stars, and there were a lot of funny-looking people in town today. 3 things. So if you have your own book, you are highlighting funny stuff on the news, this direct quote on page 7. And she snaps, and she's like, no, I haven't heard from my sister. I don't want to talk about it. And he's like, okay, you're right. I'm being stupid. They go upstairs to go to bed. He looks out the window while she's in the bathroom getting ready to go to sleep. The cat's still outside on the wall. They go to sleep. He convinces himself that even if it is Harry Potter, no way is it going to affect him and Mrs. Dursley directly. So he's like, even if it is about them, it will never get back to us. So now there's kind of like a scene shift, and you are taken outside, and the cat is looking like down the road. And right where the cat is looking, a man just pops kind of out of the ground. He just appears there, almost magically. We learn that this man's name is Albus Dumbledore. Albus Dumbledore has a very long white beard and very long white hair, long enough that the book says they can tuck it into his belt. He is, we don't know exactly who he is yet, but we know that he's like this kooky, weird-looking old man. And he sees the cat, and he laughs, and he goes, I should have known. There's no one there, just the cat. So we can figure out that he's kind of talking to the cat, which is weird. Then it says that the man takes out a silver cigarette lighter. Like, you know it's like this big, the rectangular Zippo lighters? Like, you go like flick, and then it's like a Zippo. This says that the man took out a silver put outer, which was like a Zippo lighter, flicks it open, and clicks it 12 times. And you know street lamps? Every time he clicked it, the street lamp went into the lighter until the street was in total darkness. So then he walks over to where the cat is, and then he says, fancy seeing you here, Professor McGonagall. Then Professor McGonagall pops up. Professor McGonagall was the cat. She is a professor at a place, and she is a magical person who can transform herself from a cat to this woman. These two people could not be more different. Professor Dumbledore offers her immediately a piece of candy, and she's like, this is not the time for candy. Totally different people. You get the sense that Albus Dumbledore is more of like a, you know, it's all good, no stress, no worries. And then you get the sense that Professor McGonagall is like the stick up her butt type, which is like, just panic all the time. And then they talk a lot about stuff that they're not explaining. They're like, is it true? Are the rumors true? People are being careless, and no one explains to the reader what they're talking about. And then she says, has you know who really gone? Professor McGonagall is asking Albus Dumbledore, has you know who really disappeared? And he says, yes, he is gone. And she says that something to the effect of, is it true what they're saying about how he disappeared? And Albus Dumbledore says, yes. She says, I heard that he disappeared because he couldn't kill a little boy. And he killed Lily and James Potter and tried to kill their son, but he couldn't, so he disappeared. And Albus Dumbledore said yes. Professor McGonagall was incredibly upset by the fact that Lily and James Potter died, but Harry did survive. Again, we don't know much about this you-know-who guy. We know his name is Voldemort. We know he killed a bunch of people. He killed Harry Potter's parents, but when he tried to kill Harry Potter, he couldn't, and he just kind of exploded and then disappeared. And that's all we know. We know we have Albus Dumbledore. We don't really know who he is. He just seems pretty calm in a very terrifying situation. We have Professor McGonagall, who is asking all kinds of questions of Albus Dumbledore. She's very uptight. She's been waiting for him to show up all day long. And we have Voldemort, who all we know is that he's killed a bunch of people, killed Harry's parents, but he couldn't kill Harry, so he disappeared. And then Professor McGonagall asks Albus Dumbledore, what are you doing here? He says, I've come to bring Harry to live with his aunt and uncle. Remember the Dursleys. And she says, you can't mean these people. They could not be more unlike us. These are the worst kind of people I've ever seen. And he says they're the only family he has left. So then she kind of gives him a funny look and is like, do you have Harry under your cloak? Because where is he? And he says, Hagrid is bringing him. And we are introduced to Hagrid because Hagrid comes into the street on a flying motorcycle and then lands it on the ground. So a motorcycle just goes and lands on the ground. And then Hagrid is described, Hagrid is described as a big, huge man, twice as tall as a normal man, and 5 times as wide as a normal man, with hands the size of trash can lids and feet the size of dolphins. Big, huge, giant dude. He is cradling Harry and gives Harry to Dumbledore. Dumbledore puts Harry on the doorstep. Hagrid is crying. He's so upset about the fact that the Potters died. He's so upset about the fact that Harry has to go live here. Professor McGonagall is so upset about the fact that Harry is living here because, she's been watching the Dursleys all day and realizes how terrible they are. And Dumbledore is not happy about it, but he understands that Harry Potter is going to be the most famous person in the world. And he wants Harry to grow up away from all of the fame. He wants him to have a little bit of normalcy because Dumbledore says at some point Harry's going to be famous for something he won't even remember, famous for it before he can walk and talk. Can you imagine the effect that would have? So as crazy as Dumbledore seems, he's very, very wise. So the last part of the chapter I'm going to read to you. They've all left at this point. Hagrid got back on the motorcycle, flew it back up into the sky. Dumbledore is leaving. He took back out his put all the lights back on, so all the street lights returned to normal. And then Professor McGonagall turned back to a cat and started walking across the street and gave Dumbledore another one of these before she left. And this is the last paragraph of chapter 1, which is incredibly important. A breeze ruffled the neat hedges of Privet Drive, which lay silent and tidy under the inky sky, the very last place you would expect astonishing things to happen. Harry Potter rolled over inside his blankets without waking up. One small hand closed on the letter beside him, and he slept on, not knowing he was special, not knowing he was famous, not knowing he would be woken in a few hours' time by Mrs. Dursley's scream as she opened the front door to put out the milk bottles, nor that he would spend the next few weeks being prodded and pinched by his cousin Dursley. He couldn't know that at this very moment people were meeting in secret all over the country, and they were holding up their glasses and saying in hushed voices to Harry Potter, the boy who lived. The boy who lived from Voldemort's attack. One more important thing in the chapter was that when Voldemort couldn't kill Harry, there was a scar that was given to Harry. And McGonagall was like, Albus, can't you get rid of the scar? And he said, even if I could, I wouldn't. So that's the first mention of the scar. And then they said that the scar is in the shape of a lightning bolt. Harry Potter for real. And then if you're confused about what the scar looks like, It's on the cover of the book. You can see Harry's scar. So, very different than the movie, because I know in the movie, Dumbledore just pops up, turns off some lights, and then Hagrid shows up. Like, it's very different than the book. But we really got to meet the Dursleys at this point, figure out that Lily and James did die. And then on Monday and Tuesday, my plan is to watch the movie, just that one part, so we can compare how different it is to the book. And then we're going to start with chapters 2 and 3 next week. If you have any questions, email me. I'm going to text you guys now to remind you. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was that I figured out that I can stack YouTube videos on my website. So I'm just going to keep pushing them down so that horrendous first video that I made is going to go to the bottom. This is going to go on top of that. And then they're all going to be stacked there. So if you have subscribed to my YouTube channel, you can just watch them right from YouTube. But for everyone else, they're just going to constantly be posted one right on top of the other on that page. Cool. Anything you want to add, babe? He can't hear me. He's ignoring me. Anything you want to add? Do you have anything you want to add? He's been making fun of me all morning. Okay, if you have any questions, email me. If not, have a good weekend. I'm sorry this was so much longer than I promised it would be. Like I said, it will get better at some point. Okay, bye.